All right, so I went to go work on somebody's car today. It gave me a fucking big headache, but this is your car now. See this? Brand new brake hoses in the front. And I'm trying to look. See that silver pin, that red, the silver dot right here? Brand new. So that means the brake hardware new. That means everything is probably new. And because you have a V8, you don't have small, you got big 10-inch brakes here. This doesn't look good, but it's actually just there's a extra layer over this. It's like they put an extra thing here because it goes through this rubber bushing. The metal lines are actually in really good shape on this car. If you look over here, okay, it looks like it's rusty here, but it's really not bad. But these would be worse than this one. See, look at this. This is the one. This guy right there coming out, and you have a proportioning valve in this car, but it's for drum brakes, of course. So this one here, that's the one that goes to the rear of the car. The one on the front goes. Oh no! Wait a minute. No, this is no. What am I talking about? This one. These two come from the master. The ones on the top here. This one and the one down here goes to the front of the car, which goes around here, right? Let's see. This guy goes here. What's going on here? One of these is going down. Aha. So it goes up and around and down and to the back of the car. Now, I saw where it goes, and I remember doing this on Vinny's car, but his car was even older, the Falcon, but it was a piece of junk. It runs along the whole drive shaft tunnel. So it's a job, but they're in perfect shape. You understand? They're not hanging out where the rust is on this car. It's hanging out in the drive shaft tunnel that always has like all this wind going around it. So, let's see. See that line? And the skinnier line? That's going to the brakes and rear. It's really in good shape. And you can tell the tranny was rebuilt. It's painted. I mean, I don't know what they did on the inside. But it kind of looks like you dented your pan. What I thought was tranny lines or rubber lines, it's actually just, they kind of like bent down. It's almost like you clip something and yank them down. And I just think you really have an oil leak more than a tranny leak. But the tranny is leaking. There was red stuff. I was kind of wiping it. But it looks like you might have touched the pan in a couple of places. And you can't really see the dent like you can. You could probably see that dent right there. Boom. And it kind of may have shifted the what do you call it? The pan. And this is the shifter that I was talking about. That all looks like it's in kind of good shape. This guy here with the slide, it ends up being it's actually coming from the I believe it is at least. Maybe it is that. I'll double check that it doesn't move, you know, but it kind of looks like it's fine. I'm pretty sure most of your problem was yeah, I'm gonna double check that's where it needs to be, because maybe, like I said, it's getting hung up when it's in the right place, and when it's in the wrong place, then you have a problem. But it looks like mostly oil leaks. I know something looks like it's seeping here, but it doesn't seem to be like a large amount of fluid. For the most part, the tranny is dry. But like you see, the old cable going in, it could possibly leak there, but it's not leaking there. It's not leaking here at all. So it really just looks like you may have kind of went over something and touched the pan. Something like that. I think this should be changed, because even your gas line doesn't look bad. You know, it's somebody like kind of. I still feel like this has got somebody caught this, you know, but it's possible because they put this filter in here, and that's the reason why they kind of had to like make it shorter and curve this. You know, it doesn't seem to be a big deal, but this rust is quite a bit of rust here. Oh. Not getting it on camera. Like right here, it's actually strong where I have the jack holding the car up. But you got some rust here, and you can tell that a bunch of people that try to put the jack, you know, a jack or a lift here, or they successfully did it, but it eventually held. but they got some issue here. They really got to grab it from over here. Now this is your speedometer cable that's screwed to here. I guess the original points are that was holding by are gone or something like that. But the whole brake line, honestly, this is such a long and complicated line, but it's really not bad. And like I said, this line here, you can tell it's gold. It's been changed. This is a vent. No, that is the actual thing, or is that the vent for the rear end? Where am I looking? I can't see because I'm on the other side. Yeah, this is the brake line. This is the vent for the rear end. Okay, it actually doubles as a vent. There's like a bolt that holds the brake line in, but there's a hole in the middle. All right, and then this is the other one. This is the rubber brake line that's busted. You know, this line here is actually in very good shape. You know, but this is the one I would say to change. You know, if anything, if it's ever at all questionable, I would say this one. But the main one here, like, it really depends how I get that out. It doesn't really look bad though. The whole line sometimes it's deceptive because they put undercoating on these cars, and then it looks like it's like rusty, but it's really just like that rubber coat, the rubberized undercoating that's on it. But this is, I guess, a vent line for the fuel, because the fuel one runs on the outside, and this one runs on the inside. This is the fuel, and that's a return, but there's a filter on it, so I don't see how that is. I'm not quite sure. It looks to be like a return line, you know. But the whole line here is in very good shape, even that return line. So I don't see a point to changing it, you know. This would be the worst part of it. I could technically, you know, make a small piece, you know, but it's a whole lot of shit to fucking change. I thought it was on the outside. It's really like long, and it's in really good shape. And something tells me when it's 50 years old, it's good. And it's funny how the rubber, I can't believe that the rubber line broke before, you know, the steel line. That's just like insane to me. So that's where I'm up against. I haven't started it today. Busy on the other thing. Finally got that other thing done. But other than it looks like maybe you're leaking some steering fluid. I don't know how often you're adding, but it's not showing up on here really, just at the tip there. A little bit low. But your steering, you have a steering stabilizer, I think it's called, but it might actually be the piston that has fluid in it. Yeah. Your piston for the thing, it's kind of leaking. So you know, I don't know if you're adding oil to this. I said it was oil before, but it might just be, you know, the piston here seeping. This boot is ripped. It's basically non-existent. These steering hoses look a tad old for sure. There isn't it's again, like your lines are lasting longer than the piston. Like the piston is leaking before the lines. That's crazy, you know. But that's what it seems like. That's your issue, you know. Like I said, I'm going to go over again with the linkage here to make sure that it's not, you know, because it would make sense now that there was enough training fluid and it was just a matter of, you know, some weird fucking thing happening with this linkage. So I'll get to that. But so far so good, you know, like these are fucking huge brakes. They're taking up the whole room there. And because it's a V8 car, they gave decent brakes with it. So I'm like, I will say that your master cylinder, that looks old and rusty. I thought it looked like it was replaced, and it might have been, but I'm kind of thinking less of that is true. And after you run it dry like we did, not that it would, you know, prevent it from, you know, constantly adding fluid to it is not going to really lubricate it, but it may be good, but it may be time to change that. But I don't really know. But maybe you can get one, we can get one that has a flip cover on it at the very least, so you don't have to use a fucking tool to get this off. This bolt here, that looks like really old, older than dirt, and it might be close to original, so you might benefit greatly from a new one. So that's where I'm at now with this. All right, it's 10 minutes long, so I think that's enough. I didn't see anything crazy going on here otherwise. So you got a lot of new things. You got, I think the cable that you said, I guess is the one going to the starter. I mean, all these always look skinny, but that's not a big deal. this negative, or maybe the negative is what you bought. Yeah, that one looks scary. Yeah, that's not so great. But it has 2 points. I don't know if that's actually a ground or it's just holding it. I think it is a ground. A lot of these old cars had it, but it's not even necessary. But it was just to make sure that your regulator here is grounded. You know, your voltage regulator, which is a smart thing. You can always run an extra wire for that. Yeah, your shocks look old, they're bouncy and stuff like that, but it's something that you're probably gonna have to tackle all at once. But honestly, like I said yesterday, the front end actually doesn't really seem so bad. I know it. I got to drive it probably more once the brakes are done. But like I said, it might be the strut rod bushings or something like that, which really you might be able to change them without going crazy. But it looks like you have bushing there. You know, this is the bushing. You know, I see a space here. I see like a cut in the metal here where this washer is. I don't know what the fuck that thing is. That's why I think somebody changed it, but I wonder if it's adjusted properly or tightened down properly. Who knows? But there's bushing there. You know, it's not like it's completely wiped out. So it just might be a little bit sloppy because that's the nature of it when the guy was putting it down. But when I drive it, I'll know more. But all right, let me cut this short now. Just send this to you. I probably have to send it in 2 parts on Facebook. Okay. So I put in the other hose. You can see it's completely blown out. I got the other line on. Like I said, it was a new line, but it was funny because I saw like the old nut. So it made me think for a second, but then I realized after I took out the other line, because this other line, it broke off on me when I unscrewed it from one side. And I ended up having to cut the new one. I took the longest one because it's about 40-something inches long. But like, whereas the, this is the, it's funny because it broke off and the piece was stuck in there. I heated this up. It took me like 10 minutes to get the piece out. And then I realized, I'm like, wait a minute. It's just like this one. It just has a smaller nut on it. You know, because usually when you buy the new ones, they have a 3/8 nut. This is a 7/16 nut. By the way, all the nuts came off really easy, except for the one on this side, on that end, and that's why it snapped. So I managed to get this guy out. So it has a bigger nut on it, but you know, whenever possible, I always try to put the new threads. You know, regardless if the head is smaller, really doesn't matter. But this one, it actually has bigger threads on one side. So it has the small line, because usually when you go to the store and you buy the 1/4-inch lines, the neck size than this, it'll have this thread. But they're much harder to bend, and they're really only for straight runs. So most brake lines are always the small one, but they start playing games and they have these small fucking, the bigger sizes or different sizes on each side, which is even worse. So I had to reuse one end, and I'll put one new end as opposed to using this guy, because I had to heat it up a lot to get it apart, and then I realized that, no, it's the same as this one. So it has 2 different sizes. I thought both, because this one is 7/16 and this one is 7/16. The nuts are actually the same size, believe it or not. And see, nuts are the same size, threads are different, one side from the other. So that's why the other guy, I noticed that the nut was reused, but if you look at it, it still has the red dye on it. It's incredible shape. They really put quality stuff on the car, all things considered. You know, and I thought if I was going to have any problem, it was going to be taking the nut off of the hose where the line that touches the long line. I said it looks in really good shape. And here's the other thing about that line. If you run it, it has to be run in the drive shaft tunnel. I don't like to run these into a drive shaft tunnel because just for argument's sake, your drive shaft blows up, you know. If your drive shaft blows up, these lines are prone to get completely twisted and cut. So you don't really try to put these in places where they could potentially get hurt, you know, so to speak. So that's why I'd rather put steel lines. That's what I did on Vinny's. He has a Ford Falcon, and Ford has always been doing it on these bodies. They've been running them because on the outside edge, it's dangerous because probably the car is weak, you know, and it's probably prone to rust. But on the inside here, it's actually in really good shape, and I would prefer to run steel lines there if I ever had to run them. But they're in phenomenal shape, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really see it being a problem. If you change your master cylinder, which this car really can't do power brakes, maybe if you got the modern bracket which is very expensive if you can find one even, for like a 77 Maverick. When they started putting power brakes on these cars, it's a weird like bent bracket because there's no room for a power booster under there. So, but similar to the 53 where you had no power brakes, that was a same idea where you can have, you know, disc brakes and have manual brakes if you had to. But that's another story. So like I said, I haven't got to even bleeding to see what kind of condition your master cylinder is in, because sometimes when you go to the floor with an old master cylinder, there's gook behind the piston. So when the piston slides past like gook and maybe rust even or whatever, because it's never been there in a long time, it actually cuts the seal up. So we'll see. That's why I said don't bother wasting fluid because it was just going to leak out, but it doesn't make anything better. This is a clip that holds the brake line. I put a new one on. I have some of those. So now I gotta, like I said, I cut this line. I'm gonna put this end on the original end and have a new end on this line, and button up that side with the flaring tool. So got the line in. It bled out really easy. This is the other guy's line. Bled it from here too, and that's the new rubber hose. New clip, and that is just like some kind of undercoating over it, and that's the little piece that came off the undercoating, but it's super condition, I must say. And it was really only the end of that line that was, you know, even an issue. But what was I gonna, anyway, yeah, I put a clamp because they had a permanent, like a crimp clamp on that, so I had to put a regular clamp on that. So far so good, looks good. So one thing I want to add, I thought I was smelling gas, but it sounded like gas from the house. So, but this is a vent tube, okay? The guy changed your lines over here. The gas comes in on the side over here. These look, you know, satisfactory, but it does look like it was reused, but it was probably changed at one point. I think it's going to leak a lot of gas out with that, and this you have to actually drop the tank down because it snakes under here. But this is just fumes, you know. I mean, not the greatest thing either, but probably stay away from filling it up all the way so raw gas doesn't end up coming out here. Don't know if it's a full tank, and because I jacked it up this high, that's why I think I smelled something. But you know, this is just one of the things of discernment that nobody even thinks about. I mean, I don't know how the hell you don't see that. I don't think it's much different than it was 2 years ago, but, or more than that probably it's been. So, I mean, it's still original. Even this one is not, you know, looking super great. And if you do the tank, yeah, should have done that, yeah. So, that's another thing you can add to the list of things that need to be done. The gas tank's got to be dropped down to change this. So, unfortunately, hopefully you just kind of can go halfway-ish, but I don't know how much gas you got. It sounded like it was full, so it's just not worth it right now. You're fine, but it should be done. By the way, I mean, obviously these look like brand new tires. They're fine, but just to let you know, the date code is 2216. That's the 22nd week of 16. So somebody gave you tires that had been sitting for 7 years. Just to let you know. All right, so just having a look at this. You see that little wheel right there with the little dashes inside this hole? Right there. I tried moving that, and it's, oops, put my finger. All right, if you look in this hole right here, see that little wheel? Oops. It don't move, and you can tell it's almost like this, the teeth are wearing down, like somebody tried to adjust this a long time ago, and it doesn't go. You need all new hardware and new brakes probably in the rear. It does not look like they were done. If somebody did them, they reused a bunch of shit, and it's not actually adjusted properly. And these wheel cylinders, you know, it's amazing how they haven't blown up, but they look original. I would have to say that they are original. So this rear brakes, if this car hasn't seen a ton of miles, there's a chance that it was, you know, never done. So they get hard over time, the brakes. So, you know, they get petrified. So the shoes, you could look at them 100 times and they look like they have plenty of meat on them. But if they're old, they get hard as a rock. If they get hard as a rock, then you have like a rock trying to stop on a piece of steel, which is the drum. And they're two like surfaces, so what actually ends up happening is that they don't actually stop very well. So despite, you know, having a good pedal now, you know, that's a little bit of a problem as far as stopping. So the rear brakes are something you want to do, because if you start putting disc on the front particularly, you'll start wearing out the disc brakes in the front because the rears just don't do anything. That's the nature of it, you know. So just run that by you too as well. Bleach white. I just did all 4 of your tires. The blue is bothering me. Okay, so if you remember me showing you the battery cable down here, I said it goes to the engine block. It's very skinny, but it also goes to the regulator here and then to the battery. So what I did is I left the original one because 2 reasons. Number one, it has a ground, and they're telling you back then, oh, this is a loose fitting thing. That's interesting. I think I gotta do something about that. Oh boy. How the hell did that work? Somebody had a clamp on here, it looks like, of some sort. Anywho, so this thing here, they knew there was probably a problem, and in time there usually is. Usually when these things don't get grounded right, you gotta either put it ground or you gotta drill new holes to screw it into the sheet metal. With this way, I left the original one on, that way it provides a ground just for the voltage regulator, because it's important to charge. And your battery cable that you had is actually a little too short. So I just put it right to the head. There's a bolt right here. I just put it right there. It's fine, you know. This can be manipulated. It's just been bent for a long time in the package. But I put it down, you know, that way. Kind of looks uniform now. And it's a nice big 2 fucking gauge cable, just like this one. It's a nice cable, I must say. The only cable that you haven't got done is this one, which is a skinnier cable. This one goes to the starter. So it's like an eye loop to an eye loop thing. Eventually, you're probably going to have to do it because that's pretty small, you know. So that's another thing you can add to the list. Basically, it'll say from switch to starter, you know, when you order it. Haven't started it up yet, but I'm gonna try now. But I'm gonna play with this thing. I'd like to get it to fit a little tighter. I don't know what the deal is here. It's almost like this aftermarket thing here is a little small. This one seems to fit really good. It's either that or whoever did it crimped it on. See, look, the thread is bigger, and I think that's what this one was. It was the same thread, yeah. So this is a loose fitting thing here. So this thing here may not be, you know, really the right one for the car. Sometimes aftermarket companies say they fit them and they really don't. So what this thing does is it gives, this goes to your points. Okay, and while you're cranking the engine, it gives you full 12 volt power to the points. Okay, so that's a little funny. So that means I don't even know if the regular points would be working at that point, because usually when you crank the key, you have power. This gives, you know, gives the power to the ignition system, and but while you're cranking it, the original ignition system is not working. So when you let go of the key, the original ignition system clicks in, and it's resisted, so it's a weaker spark. But when the car is cold, in cold weather, you want a full spark. So that's why when you crank it, so once I see this, I'm like, something's not right with this guy. So I gather it's been starting, so maybe I'm wrong about, you know, the ignition on this particular car, where you crank it, it still has the original ignition system. This usually just gives it extra power. Unless Ford did it differently and they don't have that, but I'm pretty sure most of them had it, and it usually goes right on the starter solenoid. Yeah, that's like way loose. And I don't know if I should bother even crimping it now, because if you get the right one, it probably will be fine, because it'll fit on nice and tight. So basically, if you look at the info on a particular part, you know, like this particular brand, it probably said that the 2 minor things, one was a certain size, you know, like this one here is like 1030, it's 832s, and this one's probably 1032s, you know, so it's a whole size smaller, you know, so that's something you want to look at, where they're both the bigger size. So I kept playing around in there, and all of a sudden I opened this latch and boom, it opened. So I believe I was pulling this before last time, but I'm gonna I'm going to take this out. I want to see what to deal with it. Yeah, I can get it to work most likely, but it worked flawlessly at the time that I did it. So I don't know. There's got to be something that like a little. Sometimes a spring breaks or pops off, and then it doesn't really work right. Or like I kept playing with this, so it's possible that this is not unlocking enough. You know, something along those lines. And when I said this, I meant this. Okay, I found the problem. Okay, let's hope I can see this. Try to stick this in your door. There's a light. All right, torch on. Okay. So this car was in an accident, and you can see this Bondo coming through these holes that they drilled. But look carefully, all the way up there. I got the door stuck again, and I found out what it is. It's actually in the door handle. I'm still trying to figure this out. Hang on. See right there? That pin is in, and it's getting binded on that. So lubing it helped, but I got it stuck again. Now I had to really force it to get it stuck, but that's the reason. You can see now it's off. So when I played with it, that's when that thing moved in. But you can see, like, the pin is not aligned. It's supposed to go through, and I gather something's supposed to hold it. So I'll see what I can do. Alrighty, so I got the handle out. As you can see, the pin is hanging, and it's supposed to go through there, and apparently there's some kind of clip. So I will try to find what I believe is an E-clip to put back in there. So I used a little washer in there because it's a very small tip. It's like reduced sized. And then this is a clip from a GM accelerator cable. And I bent it down further here, and it's really on. It's not going anywhere. In fact, it was holding it a little bit tight. I did wire wheel it, but it was almost like getting, you know, it was binded here, which the spring should overcome. Not a big deal. But it's all ready to go. I just got to pick up some white lube. I really want to use white lube instead, because I usually use the other stuff to, you know, to initially lube it. But that's to get it freeze, because it has penetrating oil. It gets inside little, you know, crevices and whatnot. But ultimately, you want to use the white lube then, and that will really get in and stay in there, as opposed to washing away. So I'm going to go pick some up, and I'll get it back together. If you want an inspection, just let me know. But I paid $20 extra on top of the inspection. So, and I don't know if the guy can do it today. If he can do it today, then it's one thing. But if you can't, then, well, I mean, I'm probably going to end up, as much as I want to get rid of the car, I don't know. I'll see. I'll see what he says. If you want me to get it, let me know. So you can see your door is slightly higher over here. And here it's just about perfect. Okay, which tells me that the latch is in the right place. But when you close it, it doesn't quite close all the way. You gotta slam it pretty good. So then I go like this, and then I'm holding it. I don't know if you can see it on here, but nice amount of play on those hinges. So what happens is somebody try to adjust it to make up for the wear. And it's kind of, you know, it's a good amount of play in these hinges. I don't know if you can see it. I'm trying not to shake the car, only the door, while keeping my hand pretty steady, trying to at least. Anyway, I lubed them all up, but you know, so you just hope for you know, relative less friction. Thing is, it's like if the door wants to go down, it's almost like they should have gone down with the hinges instead of up. No, if it's down, it's hanging down. Yeah, so you see when you're looking at it, yeah. So there's something odd with this. They may have put it way too up, and then it's a little tight down there. You can see this car was in an accident, though. That's why I was saying there were holes drilled, and there were Bondo going through the holes, if you remember, and the other thing. And look, you got Bondo. This is Bondo, the pink Bondo right here. So this whole door here, this was all an accident, and something, you know, probably happened with the hinges back then. But ultimately, I think in order to get the car correct, because if I lower these hinges, this is going to go down as well. So basically, you're lining it up. You know, ultimately, you want the door in a place where there's no resistance on this pin. But the pin is doing all the work, and I wouldn't be surprised it's part of the problem with the door, you know, eventually messing up, you know, and putting all that tension on that pin that's up here in the thing there, because, like, you know, boom, it just lets go, you know, and then the door sinks right away. So it's almost better to put a jack on the door and actually force it up, and that might be like the problem. They might actually be bent in a certain sense. I'm not sure how well it seals, or if you can tell, it looks like it's up more on one side than the other, but you know, it's an old car. You know, I reduced this amount of play, but it works. You know, the rod had to be bent, but it's like I keep trying to bend it. It really doesn't want to bend. See, I'm actually like, I just try to bend it. It actually moves the thing, but it works like butter in that sense. So. Yeah, so the latch is in the right place, but the door is way down, but the door is way up over here in door measurements, you know. Like I said, it's almost better like to force it up with a jack and kind of bend it, you know, the pins will usually bend, and then this might actually go down while that goes up. So maybe try that. Right. I think I put as much time as I can. That's not going down. I didn't do anything with it. But this side here, I was trying to adjust this to make a little less pressure on it. Those screws right here, they don't want to come out. I use the proper tool. The impact driver, the screwdriver head was big enough. I'm fucking wailing on it. It didn't want to come. So what I try to do is, you know, there's a piece of plastic, like, it's like a plastic gasket, but it makes it slide easy so you don't have to loosen these too much. Still doesn't go. I thought I moved it a little bit, apparently not, but I walloped this down to try to get it to go. It just doesn't want to go. So there's a little bit of bindage, you know, at the top there. So like when you're coming out of the car, in particular, let's see if I can. So when I pull the handle, you'll see the door drop down. Boom. It kind of harshly drops down. There's some load on that, you know. It's loose. Here's the thing. These are the bolts, and you can see two of them, but the third one, yeah, the third one you can't see at all. Over here you can see a trace of the third one. Where is it? Right there. But you know, you're supposed to do this with the fender off. You know, other car manufacturers, it actually makes it, you know, relatively easy to do it from here. And here's the thing. The way to do it with the fender on would be to unbolt these and take the door off, put the door to the side, then play with those bolts, and then get it lined up. You know, you play with it, put the door back on, get it lined up, close it, lock down, you know, the bolts that you could see, carefully take the door off again, tighten all three bolts for each hinge, and then do that. On top of that, you know, you have, you know, got play in the bottom hinge at least, and maybe the top one as well. I actually jacked up on the door, and it really didn't do anything. The car was just going up. But there's a fair amount of play in there. It's just, but there's a fair amount of play, but somebody messed with it. They should have just left it loose, and it would have been better off, but they actually try to adjust it to make up for the wear and tear, and it's just something not right about the door, you know. And that's probably why you had to, you know, like, as things got old, it was harder to push this, you know, but it should hold. You can almost see the door kind of, its angle change just by releasing it. That's the best I can do, though. It's still, you know, slams kind of hard. It is what it is. Sorry about the fingerprints. But I think I'm done. That's how high it's going to be right now. I'm going to see the operation of the choke, how good it is. Everything had to be adjusted, but I don't know if this is oil from the rear main seal, or the valve covers, or the brake fluid that may have spilled. I'm sure it'll go away. But there's a miss in this engine. Something's wrong. So I'm going to get it warmed up, and then I'll see, because it determines how much I play with the choke. So when you rev it, it goes up a little bit. I mean, it opens up a little bit. It's going to make that a hair less. As far as the idle is concerned, sometimes it catches up with itself. At least in the wintertime, you just at least let it run and let it warm up, you know? It's a heat choke. If you convert it to an electric choke, it'll probably be a lot quicker. But, I mean, your ability to kick it down will be quicker, but in cold weather, you kind of don't want that to warm up too quick, because the choke may warm up, but not the engine. See, this is the reason why this works, is because you know when it kicks down, that's when the engine, you know, works. But you got to keep going like that to get it to go. And I can adjust this flap. See, like it runs with it all the way open. It's almost like it's running too rich, you know? So that's probably, I have a feeling they made it very rich. It may also want to run rich if there's a problem. Definitely has a blip in it. I don't know if a wire is off. I'm going to check the firing order and see if there's adjustment screws I can play with. Okay, time lapse another minute or so. Okay, so when you start flooring it, see, it's not all the way open, but that's a good thing. So the choke is down. See, look, it went right back up now. So I mean, whether or not that means it's still cold or warm, that can be played with. Just not want to, you know, open, because don't forget, it's a rebuilt carburetor. They reuse that choke, and I already have it like kind of past the point. Yeah, I'll just release it a little bit. It's like a coiled up spring, and it loses its you know, what it's originally intended over time. So that's funny how it's right back up again. Huh. So I can feel warmth. I can feel that, you know, I can feel hot air, or just the heat from the engine. It's not completely warm, but maybe at this point. So that little screw right there. This is the point where you can drive it, but it's still holding the choke closed a little bit. Not that this would stall, but in the winter it might. So that's why it's good to cut off the air until it really warms up. Just want to verify that it opens all the way. I might be happy with the choke is, but there's a fine adjustment here, and that should allow me to let it open more, but it seems like it has to open up that much more. And you want it to do it in a reasonable amount of time. It's not, you know, I wouldn't want it to keep closing in the winter. start driving and then this thing is connected to your exhaust, this guy down here, it's a little pipe that goes and it just grabs fresh air through the exhaust manifold into this to warm it up. It's almost there. That's the only time when you have a new carburetor, like on a cold day, you want to make sure it works, and then on a hot day. And sometimes you have to adjust it for hot and cold weather. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much open. I think it naturally kind of falls in that place, but it's only been running for like 5 minutes. So. Now, even in the summer, if you start shutting it off and you barely let it cool off, the next thing you know, you got high idle, you know. But you know, you got to be a little aggressive with the gas, you know, like vroom vroom, get it down sometimes. That helps, you know, get it. But it may go back up again. But it's kind of, you know, it's kind of how it is, you know. So I think that's okay. I'm going to start playing with the adjustments now, the mixture adjustments. I'm going to double check the firing order. There's a blip in this engine for sure, and you really feel it when it's cold. So I don't know if you've done a tune-up on this car or not, but they don't look terribly old, all these parts. But if somebody didn't do the points right, I mean, I'm looking at those plugs. I see auto light, so it's not like there's some like 20-year-old motorcraft in there, but it is. I want to say it does look a little bit old, but I guess it should run. But I'm going to do the fundamentals first and then take it from there. So I just adjusted the screws, and then I got my hand in the air, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. I can smell gas. Yeah, it's leaking. So I got my 1 inch here. It looks like it's kind of loose. Usually that thing is just supposed to be tightened. I don't think it's a plumbing thread. But I could be wrong. I don't know if it's supposed to be a gasket there or what. It feels like it's getting tight, so I don't want to go crazy. So I will see if it continues to drip. Hard to say. I'm going to let it go a little bit. Obviously, it's, you know, I got to let it kind of evaporate if it's, you know, like in 5 minutes, if it's still wet, then there's something up with that gas filter. Now I'm going to check the firing order. Okay, so this is your setup here. That looks a little crappy. Not as bad there. Now, this is probably a special rotor. Then again, usually put the Ford rotors in the Chrysler when you have this electronic conversion, and you do have an electronic conversion here. I don't know what year it's from or whatever, but just to let you know, see how this is a mounting bolt right here, and it's tight. I don't have the screwdriver in there, but this guy here is so bad connection here or there. Oh, it's stripped. So that's the problem. Or maybe it's not even fucking in the hole, because that's funny. And this is a weird distributor. This is like, I wonder if this is California emissions, where it's got take the vacuum off and on, connected to a vacuum, a thermal switch here. And I don't like this per se. Let's cut the wires here. And this guy, I wonder what these guys are for. And apparently this one too. That's weird. What the fuck is this? It kind of plugs into itself. I guess it's for different options. I don't know. This spring here and this little nub was just sitting on the valve cover here, so it must have fell off this carburetor. I kind of just pushed it right back in. They call it a dash pod. It actually lessens the drop off on the idle. Yeah, so that's interesting. So I will take a look at that. I'm gonna unscrew the other side and see if it's tight. Because you know, if it's not, I'm sure it's properly grounded. I mean, actually, the ground screw is on that. So something's up with that. That's a little weird. but probably the plugs are my feeling, you know, at this point. So it's just easier to just change the plugs than to sit there and try to diagnose which one is misfiring. I'm spoiled with, you know, check engine lights telling me which cylinder is bad. So I just went to loosen this one. Okay, so just let me watch. And when I push down, look. I gotta. This is apparently not lined up. I need two hands, but that's basically what I'm looking at here. Yeah, so these are not installed properly. I'm gonna look up for the instructions on this now, because there's no hole for this. That screw is just not able to be tightened. It's amazing that it stayed in there. There's a threaded hole here, but it might have said in the instructions to tap that to the proper size so it accepts the screw. I was trying to look to see if there was another way you can go with these other holes, but apparently not. So it kind of lines up, you know, that hole, but it's not really. It's only being held by one screw. And if it's just a little tiny bit this way, this is maybe why you're getting a short or a long spark, and it's not helping your situation with little blips and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, get that guy out of the way. See, when this guy, hang on, let me put the light on the phone. See, that guy can line up. Yeah, it's actually lined up. It just, there's no screw hole there. Nothing. And it's like the screw is too big. It's like it was kind of forced in. So I should have a tap that size, so we'll see what happens. So as I was revving it, I'm like, damn, this fucking thing, the belt just keeps on squeaking. And I know they look good from that way, but there's a bunch of cracks in this guy. And the alternator belt was chewed up on one end. Now this belt is a belt I had here in the garage. It's a new belt, but it's longer. And I have it all the way at the maximum adjustment. So, I mean, it's kind of fine, but it still squeaks then, you know. It's not quite as tight as it should be. Unless I'm also getting shit from the power steering, you know. But this thing is really chewed up, and then... Hang on a second. It's all cracked. Hang on. Come on, focus, motherfucker. Looks like a smiley face. Yeah, it's like every single strand of the belt is fucking ripped. And like I said, it was chewed on the inner part. So I was like, you know, why don't I see what I have? See, it's all chewed up there. That was on the inside. It was this way. I was originally going to flip it. Then I'm like, oh my god, this is bad. So yeah, I can go to AutoZone and probably find one, but you probably buy them cheaper online. It's tight. It's the other one was tight too. At least this one's not going to just snap on you. Hang on. At least this is not going to snap. It's tight, but it's as tight as it's going to be. It's basically an inch longer, I think. So if it's 39.5 inches, 395. Your belt is a 15.395. This is a 15.405. So it means it's 40.5 inches, and yours was 39.5. So that's basically you can go an inch above or an inch below, and usually the belt will fit. But like in this case, it's all the way. It's all the way at the max adjustment. You know, so. I can leave this in your trunk or something like that just in case, but just buy new belts. You need them both. Like I said, 15.395 is the what am I doing? 15.395 is the alternator. The power steering, it looked like there was a bunch of listings for it. There's only one listing for power steering. Oh, the keys are in ignition. Anyway, I pulled out a spark plug, by the way. I just want to see it. It would bother me. There's a misfire in this car. So I pulled out the third one on the driver's side. And you see there's oil here. That's coming from the valve cover. Ultimately, that looks pretty good. The plug don't look bad, you know. I'm going to see if I can find anything that's misfiring. You know, ultimately I'd like to change the plugs, but they look like they don't have that much mileage. Even if you've had it for years, it's... You know, there's probably not a ton of mileage on them, but can't get two hands on it. All right, So I'm going to play with it a little bit, see if I can get it running any better. Because I think it did improve a little bit, but it had to be, I think in the distributor had to be tapped, you know. Right here. 832's tapped. So that was important, because then it could have not been exactly in the right place, a little too close, too far away to the magnet. You know, the magnet's got to be a certain distance. So, you know, I don't know. It's probably not related to the miss that I feel, but I'm going to try to find that out now. All right, so I physically feel this one. It's not nearly as hot as this one. This is the last one. This is the second to the last on this side. Second to last is hot, and it looks like a normal fire. This one here kind of looks like it's rich. Not nearly as hot. It's basically cold. Now this one that was working somehow, when you take a look in here, it was just thrown on top. Look at that. It wasn't clicked into the spark plug. Not even close. Okay? All right. The second one was also like that. It was glued on with this, okay? So much so that, like this one here, fired. I don't know how, with all that gook. This is the second spark plug. So you need to do valve cover gaskets, because it's leaking. This is oil from the engine, though. Some of the threads, yeah, it's definitely oil from that. But the other one, the other side that had oil on the threads, that's on the outside. That's just the valve cover leaking. But you have to pull off these wires to get to them. But ultimately, yeah, these plugs, they have some miles on them. Maybe not crazy miles, but they got a lot of time. And this thing here is just gone. I don't know if it's going to fire. I don't know if you're burning oil, or if that plug was just not close enough to actually make a connection. I'm going to try to clean it up a little bit, but not looking good for these wires. So you definitely need complete tune-up stuff and belts. So after cleaning it, it's so far deep in there, but the porcelain is broken. I don't think I broke it. A big chunk came out at once, and I think it very well could have cracked while it was in there, or unless the guy broke it when he put it in and just said fuck it, and then that's why it fouled out from day one. Who knows when the last time the cylinder fired, but I'm going to swap this with a different cylinder. But I mean, if you want, it's really got to be done another day. I'm going to put it to the #1 cylinder, because I just want a fresh, a plug that's working in that cylinder, the second one on this side. And I'll worry about this another time, or maybe on Sunday I can change it, just to change the one at least. Just to give you an inference, or a difference, whatever, the first one was plugged in properly. Clean. Like it should be. This is that second one that was misfiring. Of course that plug can't fire. Look at all the rust in there. And what's crazy is that the third one was hot, but look at that fucking thing. It's like almost worse. And it was loose. I just basically, it was just hanging out on it, So it's kind of a mess, to be honest. So, engine runs a lot better. There's a lot of shit in that cylinder. Still feels a little imbalanced, but those wires and plugs, it's hard to say what's right with them, Here's the bad news. So I go to lock up your car, and I close this door, and I shut it, and when I opened it, it wouldn't open. And look, I got the play again here, and that's basically it. It's whatever's in there is not retracting, and it has something to do with when you close the door, you're putting pressure on that piece. So once you lock it, it kind of throws the mechanism off, and then it doesn't have it again. So it doesn't have the throw again. So I'm hoping that the lubrication gets into it so I can open the door. So once I do that, when I get it open again, I'm going to take out the latch, and there's got to be something a little bit off about it, just a slight bit. That these things are like safeties. Like it's kind of like this is in order for it to work. Let me put my camera on my feet, between my knees. So basically, this doesn't go. That's where it's at now. And the thing is, at the same time that you hit this button when the lock is open, This just barely moves down like that, and then it goes, whoop, opens. This is not retracting, you know, like it's not getting out of the way when the time comes, you know. So it's a minor thing. Sometimes there's a big rivet through the whole thing, and the big rivet is not holding it, and this is just sloppy, and it's trying to go down, but it's cocked, you know. So when you just take it and you fucking hit it with a hammer and you smash the rivet, so it actually gets tighter. So something like that's gonna have to be done. But that's a big bummer because I thought it was fine. I fucking opened this door about 1,000 times. I could have closed it for real life. I mean, I closed it like I normally did, but it was like after I locked it, that's when I had the problem. So there's something, like I said, there's something that's off and loose, and it's just cocked or something like that in the thing. So I got to figure out how to open the door again, because it was honestly kind of like by luck. And the thing is, that pin was legitimately, you know, kind of where I pulled on it. So there's more than one problem here, though. That was a problem, but the button was still moving it. You know, even though it was sloppy, it may have not moved it full term. But you know, with the rod here and pulling here, it should have opened if it was only that case. There's definitely some issue with it. Just don't forget, when I was telling you I was closing the door, it was ramping up. And I really wanted to get it down to not put a load on that, because if you have a sloppy mechanism in there and then you close the door, it really jams it. And I think as soon as I, you know, locked the door, yeah, see, I tightened this all up. There was no play. So basically this thing has to retract back before it can open again. So basically it's locked, and this mechanism has to go all the way in. I mean, technically the fucking door shouldn't have even opened. It's kind of like closing the door with the handle open, but it's in a sweet spot that is not sweet for us, you know. And it's just locking just enough, you know. But yeah, I definitely feel the difference with the engine running. But much better, you're gonna like it. And then I'm gonna test it one more time, you know, on a morning to make sure how it starts. That's the thing with chokes. People give up on them very quickly, and the thing is, it takes a couple of days because you have to get the car totally cold before you restart it again, and make sure that it's running consistently, you know, each time. So that's that. I'm done for the day. Door works. I'll explain that in another video. Just showing you right now because I had to adjust it again. Check it again because it ran a little bit so far, but I'm going to have to let it completely cool off, even though it really hasn't run, and then do it again. So now I'm going to go through a process of warming it up to make sure that it's okay when it's fully warm. You were also missing a vacuum line. There's a vacuum line right here, and it goes here for the distributor. That means something for sure. So overall, it might be a huge improvement. Definitely feels like it's running on most of the cylinders. I still feel a vibration, but it could be this fan from when it hit here. I don't know. That fan may be out of balance, so I don't know. See, if you do this, see, it has the ability to kick it down pretty quick. So it's still in the warm-up phase, but it may stall like this if it warms up too quickly. So you kind of want to let it sit at high idle. That being said, it may be difficult to restart at times if that's the case, particularly when it's really cold out. You may have to add more gas, or you may have to floor it to let more air in, but I don't think so. I think it's going to work out well, but the main thing is just let it run some, you know. Even if you kick it down once and it goes all the way down like this, you should just let it run and let it warm up a bit. But at least it runs, you know. But I think it'll go down another step as well in the end, technically. Yeah, there wasn't much going on there. It seems a little low. That's a little better. But it's like, it's running like it's warmed up already, for the most part. That's what this carburetor does. It actually kicks back on. So I was trying to get it to be not so high so that you can actually drive with the high idle on. That's over here. See the screwdriver head. Hang on. That's a more suitable fast idle, I think. I don't know how that's going to affect when it's in more. Actually, it goes up right there, so it's actually, the choke is warming up a little bit faster than it should. But that's okay. As long as it's mechanically on this high idle part, it should be fine. So now I'm gonna make another video for the door, but pretty much I'm gonna let this warm up and mess with this, and then I'll get to the door. All right. So basically, a lot of what I was testing was with the door off, with the door handle off. But when I put the door handle on, I tested it a million times, but then I had this play in here, okay? It's minimal right now. I was trying to remove it completely, and I was bending the rod, but what I also did is I was trying to get rid of it by the rod. I don't know if you could see that guy right there. See that rod? There's sloppiness in that rod. Not in the rod, but in the mechanical part. So I was trying to adjust the rod to take up the slack. Unfortunately, it's meant to have that, sloppiness. It's kind of weird the way all these things work, and you have to just adjust it so it just fits in the hole. I was overcompensating for the play, and that's what screwed me up. I did that at the very end, and that's why I ended up having the problem. I didn't quite test it because I didn't think it was going to be an issue. So when I closed the door, I was like, what the fuck happened? So once I figured that out, and once I disconnected that rod, boom, popped right open. I'm like, I thought there was all this tension on it. I was trying to go nuts, but we're pretty much in good shape here. It's still, like I said, there's play in the door hinge and whatnot, but this is all good stuff, because everything I did was not for naught, it was all meant to be. So that was just one little adjustment of one rod. So we're looking pretty good, but I'm just going to warm this up and then get to the, I got to buy some clothes for the wedding and wedding reception, and then I'm going for the day. So, all right. Thought you'd like to see that. All right, so I've since kicked it down. It doesn't appear to be jumping back up. It's still at a point where the choke is still going. So I lowered the idle here because you don't want this idle to be higher where this thing is not open. So this is a good middle point. And eventually it's going to go. It's really almost nothing because as soon as you hit the gas, and when you have load, it's going to move more. It's going to warm up just a little bit more. But you understand, when you have something like this, the cold start, in order for the cold start to work, there's got to be some compromises with the hot start, particularly when, they just reuse the pieces that are in here. I mean, they test them, obviously they're good. It seems to be working. It's not a perfect science. So, like I said, I'm going to start it one more time when it gets cold again to make sure everything works like it should, and I'll take a whole video from that point because I did have to start it a few times and play with it. So, and sometimes it's normal. Sometimes you just got to pump the gas a little extra, keep your foot on the gas for like 10 seconds, and then boom, it straightens out, and then it figures out what, to do. All this ends up working. As you can see, this is just almost open. Totally open is like that. So, like if I make that choke looser, what ends up happening, because that was what made the difference. I had to actually make it a little bit tighter because it wasn't holding a fast idle. So I lowered the fast idle. I lowered, I did a few things, but I wanted it to hold its own idle, so you don't have to sit there and hold your foot on the gas or just warm it up forever. Or if you're warming up forever, at least you're, not holding your foot on the, you can go in the trunk, while everything's warming up. So we're just about there. So that'll when the whole engine collectively warms up, when the air cleaner is on, that'll all stay warm. It looks to be good. I think the vacuum line made a difference for sure, among other things. So I think we're in good shape for the most part. And I'm liking where this is going. It's sounding much better with the plug that's cleaned out, even with the old tune-up in. But it really sounds good. So it sounds like a V8 now instead of just a weird 7-cylinder engine. Because obviously you had the fastest 7-cylinder around, you know. But this definitely sounds good. The car does stop. I did just drive it up and down the highway. She's blocking the driveway yesterday and today. No big deal. I was going to take it for a test drive eventually. I know your brakes are probably all off as far as the adjustment. I can't adjust the rear. I was thinking about adjusting the fronts, but I don't know. Sometimes they can change the hardware, but not change those adjusters, which means a lot. But like I feel there's a little bit of play in the brake pedal. Nothing crazy. It totally stops. It's probably completely normal to you, you know. But you know, I can go down. Before it gets solid, I can go down a little bit. A couple of inches, but I'm happy where this is right now. I mean, it's running really good, pretty steady, I must say, with the exception of that little hose there. it feels pretty steady, all things considered, the way those wires looked and everything. So I'm going to button it up. I'm going to leave this guy off tonight, and when I come back tomorrow, I'll be warming it up again, covering everything up, and we should be in good shape with this, and I left it in a better place at least. So, I don't know if you can see the smoke. Fucking shit. What's fucked up is that it really wasn't leaking when I had it at the garage. And I said it kind of looks like the pan is leaking, but I didn't see a leak, so I decided to leave it alone. And now the car's not going in gear at all. And first is reverse, and it's jerking. There's something wrong here. Yeah, there's something broken in this tranny. It's like you got to shut it off and let it cool off a little bit. Then it'll go in gear, and then it starts to slip. Oh, this is a problem.